Their suffering is their penance. I feel the end is near. The signs appear. It is upon us.
They said I fell. They said I chose darkness over light. They said I was the first betrayer. But no one ever asked me why. For thousands of years, my name has been a curse word, a synonym for evil, for everything wrong in this world. Parents whisper it to frighten children. Priests say it to explain suffering. Scholars use it to define the origin of sin. Lucifer. Just the sound of it makes people flinch. But tonight, I want you to sit with me. Not because I need your sympathy, not because I want to be forgiven, but because you have only ever heard one side of this story. And one side is never the whole truth. There are two versions of who I am. Two completely different answers to the same question: was I really God's most beloved angel before the fall? Or was I never an angel at all? Was my entire existence a mistranslation? By the end of this, you will have to choose, not between good and evil, but between what you were told to believe and what the ancient text actually says. If you've ever felt like history got your story wrong, stay with me. Because tonight, we go back to the beginning. My name is Lucifer, and I need you to understand something before we go any further. That name Lucifer wasn't always a curse. Once, it meant something beautiful. It meant light bearer. In the ancient world, before electricity, before cities that never went dark, the one who carried light was the most important being in any room. Light meant safety. Light meant truth. Light meant the presence of God. And that was me. That was my name. The morning star. The one who rose before the sun. Who split the darkness before anyone else even stirred. I was first. Not in arrogance. In purpose. God made me first for a reason. But somewhere between then and now, my name became the most feared word in human language. How does that happen? How does the bearer of light become the symbol of darkness? That is the question no one has ever answered honestly. Not the priests. Not the scholars. Not the ones who built entire theologies on the ruins of my reputation. They took one line from the book of Isaiah, chapter 14, verse 12. And from that single verse they built a mythology that has lasted 2,000 years. But here is what they never told you. That verse was written about a king, a human king, a tyrant, the king of Babylon. Not me. Or was it? That is exactly what we are going to find out tonight. Because there are two completely different answers to that question. Two sets of scholars. Two ancient traditions. Both pointing at the same verse and arriving at opposite conclusions. I was there when the words were written. Or at least someone wants you to believe I was. Tonight, you will hear both sides. And at the end you will decide. Let me take you back. Not to the fall. Not to the moment everything broke. But to before. To the time when I was exactly what God made me to be. In the beginning, before humanity, before earth, before the first breath of creation, there was the heavenly court. And within that court, there was an order. A hierarchy so precise, so intentional, that every being knew their place. And my place was at the top. Not because I seized it. Not because I fought for it. Because God gave it to me. The ancient Hebrew tradition speaks of beings called the Beni Elohim, the sons of God. Celestial beings, created before the earth was formed. And among them I was the anointed one, the covering cherub. Do you know what that means? A covering cherub stood directly before the throne of God. Not beside it. Not below it. Before it. Close enough to feel the weight of His presence with every breath. That was not a small thing. That was everything. I was adorned with beauty that had no earthly equivalent. The book of Ezekiel describes a being covered in every precious stone. Sardius, topaz, diamond, beryl, onyx, jasper, sapphire, turquoise, emerald. Every stone, every color, every shade of light that God had ever created was placed on me, and I moved in it. I didn't walk through heaven the way you walk through a hallway. I moved like music. Every step deliberate. Every gesture intentional. Because when you carry the light of God, you carry it carefully. This is not pride speaking. This is memory. I remember what it felt like to be fully in alignment with the one who made me. To have no confusion, no conflict, no war inside, just purpose. Pure, clean, undivided purpose. And then something shifted. Not all at once. Not in a single dramatic moment the way the stories tell it. It started as a thought. Just one thought. The kind of thought that doesn't feel dangerous at first. It felt like curiosity. Why was I made to serve when I was made so magnificent? Why was I created with the capacity to see everything and told to look only in one direction? I want you to sit with that question for a moment. Not because I'm asking you to agree with me, but if you have ever been given a real gift and been told you could never fully use it, you know exactly what that thought feels like. That was the beginning. Not of evil, not of rebellion, but of a question that would change everything. And questions are never as innocent as they seem. That thought grew. Not overnight. Not in a week. But slowly, the way a crack grows in stone. You don't see it happening. And then one day everything splits. I began to notice things I had never noticed before. The way the other angels looked at humanity, this new creation, made from dust with such tenderness. God's attention shifted. Not completely, not suddenly, but enough that I could feel it. Like standing in sunlight and watching a cloud move slowly across the sky. The warmth doesn't disappear all at once. It just dims. And I thought, why them? They were fragile, temporary, bound to a single planet, a single lifetime, a single breath. I had existed before time had a name. I had stood before the throne when there was nothing else but God and silence. And now dust got the tenderness? I know how that sounds. I know what you're thinking. That sounds like jealousy. Maybe it was. But I want you to consider something before you judge me. Have you ever given everything you had to someone, every ounce of loyalty, every act of service, every moment of devotion, and then watched them pour that same love onto someone who just arrived? That is not a small pain. That is the kind of pain that rewrites you from the inside out. And so I made a choice. Not to destroy, not to corrupt, not to build an army against heaven. I made a choice to ask, to stand before the throne and say, is this right? Is this just? Is this what you truly want? The answer I received was not what I expected. It was not an explanation. It was not a conversation. It was a removal. Swift. Final. Absolute. How you have fallen from heaven, morning star, son of the dawn. Isaiah recorded it centuries later in a poem about a king. But those who came after, they took those words and placed them on me. And the world believed them. Because the world needs a villain. Every story needs a darkness to make the light mean something. And I, with my name, my history, my fall, was the perfect candidate. So let me ask you this. If you were removed without explanation, cast out without a trial, condemned without a single chance to speak in your own defense, would that make you evil? Or would it make you the most misunderstood being in the history of creation? 2,000 years of theology have been built on the assumption that the one who falls is always the one who was wrong. But history, human history alone, is full of people who fell not because they were evil, but because they asked the wrong question at the wrong time to the wrong authority. I was the first to fall, the first to be cast out, the first to have my name turned into a warning. But was I the first to be wrongly judged? But wait. There is something historians have hidden for centuries. Something that changes everything I just told you. Because the story you just heard, the fall, the pride, the removal, it was never actually about me. The scholars knew. The translators knew. And they said nothing. Everything I just told you is true. But so is this. Now, I need you to stop, take a breath, and consider the possibility that everything you just heard, every word of that story, was built on a single mistake. A translation error. Not a small one. Not the kind of mistake where you get a word slightly wrong and the meaning stays intact. The kind of mistake where one single word gets changed. And 2,000 years of theology get built on top of it. Here is what actually happened. In the original Hebrew text, the book of Isaiah, chapter 14, there is no angel. There is no fallen celestial being. There is no cosmic war in heaven. There is a king. A human king. The king of Babylon. The Hebrew word used in that text is Helel. Helel ben Shachar. It means shining one, son of Adon. It was a title, a poetic insult, the kind of language ancient Hebrew poets used to mock the arrogance of powerful rulers. You think you shine so bright? You think you rise above everyone else? Watch how fast you fall. That was the message, written for a king, about a king, directed at a king who had enslaved God's people and called himself divine. It was never about a supernatural being. It was never about a war in heaven. It was a political poem, a piece of prophetic literature aimed directly at the empire that had destroyed Jerusalem. So where did Lucifer come from? In 382 AD, a scholar named Jerome translated the Hebrew Bible into Latin. That translation became known as the Vulgate. And when Jerome reached Helel ben Shachar, he translated it as Lucifer, which in Latin simply means light bearer, lux light, fair to carry. It was not a name. It was not a title for a fallen angel. It was a description of a star, the morning star, Venus, the brightest point in the pre-dawn sky. And yet somewhere between Jerome's desk and the modern pulpit, Lucifer became a proper noun, a name, an identity, a being with a history, a personality, a mythology so detailed that entire religions were built around it. Think about what that means. The most feared name in Western religion, the name that has terrified billions of people across 2,000 years, may have started as a Latin word for the planet Venus. I want you to sit with that. Not to dismiss your faith, not to tear down what you believe, but because truth, real truth, does not need to be protected from honest questions. The scholars who first noticed this were not atheists. They were not trying to destroy the church. They were theologians, devout men, people who loved Scripture more than they loved being right. And when they went back to the original Hebrew, when they looked at the context of Isaiah chapter 14, they found something that made them deeply uncomfortable. The chapter begins, "You will take up this taunt against the king of Babylon." Not against an angel, not against a celestial being, against a king, a man of flesh and blood who had made himself into a god in the eyes of his people. And the poem that follows, including that famous verse 12, is a taunt, a mockery, a declaration that no matter how high any human king rises, he will fall. That was the original message. Clear, contextual, historically grounded. And somewhere along the way it became something else entirely. But how? And why? That question kept scholars up at night for centuries. Not because the answer was hidden, but because the answer was inconvenient. Here is what happened. After Jerome translated Helel as Lucifer, early church theologians began reading the New Testament through that lens. They found a passage in Luke chapter 10, verse 18, where Jesus says, "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven." And they made a connection, a lead. Isaiah's Lucifer plus Luke's falling from heaven equals one unified story of a fallen angel named Lucifer who became Satan. The problem? Those two texts were never meant to be read together. Isaiah was writing about Babylon. Luke was recording a metaphor, a statement about spiritual authority, not a literal cosmic event. Two completely separate contexts. Two completely different literary genres, merged into one mythology that has never been questioned at the scale it deserves. And once that merger happened, it became doctrine. And once it became doctrine, questioning it became dangerous. Not intellectually dangerous, physically dangerous. For most of church history, suggesting that Lucifer was a mistranslation was not an academic debate. It was heresy. So the scholars stayed quiet. The translators stayed quiet. And the name Lucifer, a Latin word for a morning star, became the most loaded word in the history of human religion. Now I need you to think about something. If the original text was about a king, if the name was a translation of a star, then who exactly have billions of people been afraid of all this time? A mistranslation. A 4th century Latin word. A description of Venus rising before the sun. That is not a small thing to reckon with. That is not a footnote in a theology textbook. That is the foundation of an entire understanding of evil, potentially built on a linguistic error. And yet I find myself hesitating. Because even as I lay this out, even as the evidence points clearly toward mistranslation, something in me resists the easy answer. Because the idea of Lucifer, the narrative of a being who chose pride over devotion, who fell from the highest place to the lowest, that story is too precise, too emotionally true, too perfectly aligned with what human beings know about the nature of pride and the cost of arrogance to be a simple accident of translation. Maybe Jerome made an error. Maybe Isaiah was writing about a king. But maybe, just maybe, the error landed exactly where it was always meant to land. There is one document the early church did not want you to read. Not because it was heretical, but because it asked the same question we are asking tonight, and it answered it differently than anyone expected. The Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered in 1947. Hidden for 2,000 years in the caves of Qumran. Among those scrolls, the great Isaiah scroll, the oldest complete manuscript of the book of Isaiah I ever found, written approximately 125 BC, centuries before Jerome, centuries before the Vulgate, centuries before Lucifer became a name anyone feared. And in that scroll, in the original Hebrew, the word is still Helel, still the shining one, still the son of the dawn, still a king. So now you have two truths sitting side by side. A story so emotionally resonant it has shaped the moral imagination of the entire Western world. And a scroll so ancient it predates the translation that started everything. Both are real. Both deserve your attention. If this story is moving something deep inside you right now, just type amen in the comments. Let me know you're here with me. So here we are. You have heard both sides now. Not from a theologian, not from a historian, not from someone with a degree on their wall and an agenda in their pocket. From me, the one at the center of the story. And I am not going to tell you which side is right, because that is not my place. It never was. What Scripture actually records is this. Isaiah chapter 14 contains a poem. a taunt against the king of Babylon. In that poem, a figure is described rising to the heavens, exalting himself above the stars, claiming to be like the Most High, and then falling, brought down to the grave, to the depths of the pit. The Hebrew word for that figure is Helel, shining one, son of the dawn. That is what the oldest manuscripts record. The New Testament records Jesus speaking of Satan falling like lightning from heaven. A separate text, a separate context, a separate literary moment. That is also what Scripture records. Jerome translated Helel as Lucifer in 382 AD. Early theologians connected Isaiah's poem to Luke's metaphor. A name was born. A mythology followed. That is also what history records. 3 separate threads, all true within their own context, all pulled together into one story that billions of people have accepted without question for 2,000 years. Now what do you do with that? Do you hold the tradition? The one that has given comfort to billions of people, that has explained the existence of evil, that has given suffering a name and a source and a story? There is real power in that. Real meaning. A framework that has helped humanity make sense of darkness for 20 centuries. That is not nothing. Or do you follow the text? The oldest manuscripts, the original Hebrew, the historical context that places this poem firmly in the political world of ancient Babylon, not the celestial world of fallen angels? There is real honesty in that too. Real courage. The kind of courage it takes to look at something you have believed your entire life and ask, what if the foundation was built on something smaller than we thought? Both paths require faith. One faith in tradition, one faith in the text itself. And I leave the choice entirely to you, because that is what I have always believed. Not in rebellion, not in pride, but in the sacred weight of a free mind standing before an honest question and choosing for itself. Maybe that was always the real test. Everything you heard tonight comes from sources you can verify yourselves. The Hebrew term Helel ben Shachar from Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12, found in the Great Isaiah Scroll, one of the Dead Sea Scrolls, dated approximately 125 BC, currently housed at the Israel Museum, Jerusalem. Jerome's Latin Vulgate translation completed 382 AD, the first use of Lucifer as a proper name in biblical translation. The theological tradition connecting Isaiah 14 to Luke 10:18, developed by Origen, Tertullian, and early church fathers, documented in patristic literature from the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD. Full references and reading links are in the description below. Go there. Read them yourselves. Do not take my word for it. If you believe someone you love needs to hear this tonight, someone who has carried fear around a name they never questioned, share this video right now. That is your blessing to give them. Now you know what I know. Every piece of it. The glory, the fall, the poem, the translation, the scroll that predates everything. You have heard it all. And I wanted to ask you something. Not as a villain, not as the symbol of everything wrong in the universe, but as a voice that has waited 2,000 years to be heard without judgment. Did the story change anything for you? Did it shake something loose, something you held without ever examining it? Or did it confirm what you always believed, that some truths are too important to be undone by a single scroll, a single translation, a single honest question? Both of those responses are valid. Both of them are yours. Because that is what I have always wanted. Not worship, not fear, not armies marching in my name. Just an honest conversation. The kind that starts with, what do you actually believe and why? 2,000 years of scholars have debated this. Augustine, Origen, Tertullian, Jerome himself, the man who gave me this name, all of them wrestled with the same questions you are wrestling with right now. And none of them arrived at a simple answer. Because simple answers are for simple questions. And this is not a simple question. So tonight I am giving you what no theologian, no priest, no Sunday morning sermon ever gave you. The right to decide for yourselves. Now you know what I know. So tell me, Team A or Team B? Was I the highest angel cast out for asking the wrong question? Or was I never there at all, just a Latin word for a morning star that someone attached a face to? Drop your answer below. And tell me why. Because 2,000 years of history deserves more than silence. And if this is the kind of story that makes you think, that makes you question, that makes you want to go deeper, you know what to do. The next story is already waiting for you. And I promise it goes even deeper than this one. Next time we go inside the garden, and we asked the question no one wants to answer, was the serpent really the villain? Or just the only one who told the truth? If you believe truth deserves to be heard, you know what to do.